The city of Novara Prime stretched like a shining jewel across the rocky plains of its planet. Towering spires of glass and metal caught the sunlight, reflecting beams that danced across streets filled with life. Humans walked alongside aliens of every shape and size, trading goods, exchanging greetings, and going about their daily lives. Hovercrafts zipped between buildings, and the sound of laughter mixed with distant machinery in a harmonious hum. For centuries, Novara Prime had been a place of peace and progress, where different species coexisted in relative harmony. But today, a sense of unease hung in the air like a thick fog. Merchants whispered rumors, children clung to their parents' hands, and city guards patrolled with unusual vigilance. Across the horizon, dark shapes moved, ships unlike any the inhabitants had seen before. They were sleek, black, and ominous, gliding through the atmosphere without sound. People stopped to watch, and even the bravest citizens felt a ripple of fear. High above the city, on the balcony of the council hall, leaders from both human and alien communities gathered. The council chamber was filled with tension. Governor Leora, a wise and respected human leader, paced back and forth. Beside her stood Ambassador Vrek, an alien elder with translucent skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Both of them studied the approaching fleet through their telescopic monitors. "They're not here for trade," Leora said quietly, her voice barely carrying over the hum of the council. "Look at the formation. They are organized, precise. This is an invasion." Vrek's eyes, which glowed faintly in the dim light, narrowed. "I have seen fleets like this before," he said, his tone heavy with warning. "The alien queen, ruler of the Zorath Dominion, travels with her army. Her power is legendary. If she sets foot on this planet, she will crush any resistance." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some council members trembled. Others clenched their fists, unwilling to show fear. Leora took a deep breath and addressed them firmly. "We cannot run. We cannot hide. Our people depend on us to make the right choices. We must prepare, but we must also remain calm. Panic will destroy us faster than her ships ever could." Outside, the citizens of Novara Prime gathered in open squares and along the streets. Families held each other close, trying to make sense of the strange shapes in the sky. Children asked questions their parents could not answer. Some workers abandoned their tasks, staring upward, their hearts pounding with dread. Even the city's defense forces, trained soldiers equipped with the latest energy weapons and mechanized armor, could not hide the tension in their movements. Among the crowd, a young human named Eli stood quietly. He was an engineer, not a soldier, and his hands were stained with grease from working on hovercraft engines earlier that day. Eli had always loved machines and solving problems, but he had never imagined a day like this. Yet something inside him stirred, not fear, but a sense of determination. Eli watched as the massive ships descended. The sun glinted off the black hulls, casting long shadows that seemed to swallow the city streets. He could see smaller craft detaching from the main ships, gliding down toward the city with frightening precision. These were not scouts, they were soldiers. And from the dark shapes emerged figures, the alien queen's army. Tall, imposing, and terrifying, their armor shimmered with an energy that seemed almost alive. The queen herself was visible in the lead ship, a towering figure cloaked in dark, iridescent armor. Her presence radiated power. Her eyes glowed with a strange, hypnotic light. A silence fell over the city as people stared at her, some unable to breathe, others frozen in awe. She raised a hand and the army moved forward in perfect synchronization. The city's alarm sounded, a deep, resonant warning that echoed through every street. Defense forces mobilized quickly, moving into formation. Leora watched from the balcony, her heart pounding. "This is it," she whispered. "The moment we have trained for but hoped would never come." Eli felt the same thought run through his mind. He was not a soldier, but he knew he had skills that could make a difference. He saw the city's defense forces preparing their barricades and energy shields. He noticed gaps, weak points where the alien army could exploit the city's defenses. Others were too focused on the spectacle of the queen herself to notice. The first clash came suddenly. Alien soldiers advanced toward the city gates, their energy weapons firing with deadly accuracy. The city's defense forces returned fire, and sparks flew as projectiles collided. Buildings shook from the impact of energy blasts, and some smaller structures caught fire. Civilians screamed, running for shelter, while the trained soldiers fought with disciplined precision. Yet despite their skill, the Queen's army pressed forward relentlessly. Eli ducked behind a market stall, his mind racing. He saw the alien soldiers moving in formations that the city's defenses were struggling to contain. He noticed one small supply transport moving behind the front lines, lightly guarded. Without hesitation, he dashed toward it, using tools from his belt to jam the vehicle's engines. It worked. The transport skidded out of control and crashed into the alien line, creating chaos among the attackers. A small cheer went up from nearby citizens who witnessed the action. They had seen one human, one ordinary person, interfere with the Queen's army. It was a small act, but it gave them hope. Others began to move cautiously, inspired by the example, ready to help in any way they could. From her position above the battlefield, the alien queen noticed the disruption. She frowned, her glowing eyes narrowing as she scanned the crowd below. She could sense the fear, yes, but also something unexpected. A spark of courage. "Humans," she hissed, her voice amplified across the city. "You are weaker than you think. Submit, and your lives may be spared." Leora's heart sank at the Queen's words, but she held her ground. "We will not submit," she said firmly. "We will defend our people, our homes, and our future." The battle raged on, but the citizens' fear was slowly replaced by cautious determination. Some humans found makeshift weapons, pipes, tools, even repaired drones, and began to aid the soldiers. Aliens who lived among them offered guidance and shared their combat experience. Eli continued moving through the city, identifying weak points in the alien formation, sabotaging vehicles, and helping civilians escape dangerous areas. Even as the Queen's army pushed forward, small victories began to appear. Alien soldiers were caught off guard by the humans' unexpected strategies. Barricades held, drones were reprogrammed to disrupt enemy communications, and energy traps slowed the advance. The city was still in danger, but hope had returned to the hearts of its people. Amid the chaos, Eli paused for a moment on a rooftop, catching his breath. He looked down at the city he loved, at the citizens who now dared to fight alongside soldiers, and at the shadow of the Queen looming in the distance. He knew that the coming days would test them all in ways no one could imagine. But he also knew one thing. Ordinary humans, when united and clever, could make a difference even against the most powerful foe. The sky darkened as evening approached, but the city of Navarra Prime did not yield. Lights flickered on across the streets and towers, illuminating the determination etched on every face. The alien Queen's army might have strength in numbers, but the spirit of humans, their ingenuity, and their courage had begun to show. And somewhere in the crowd, a young engineer named Eli clenched his fists, ready to turn fear into action, knowing that the true battle for the city was only just beginning. The night over Navarra Prime was dark, but the city was far from quiet. Fires burned in several districts, casting flickering shadows across buildings. The hum of energy weapons and the distant roar of the alien army filled the air. Citizens huddled in shelters while soldiers patrolled the streets, repairing barricades and tending to the wounded. It was a city under siege. But despite the fear, a spark of hope had begun to grow. Eli stood on the edge of a damaged rooftop, looking down at the streets below. From this vantage point, he could see the alien forces organizing for another push. He noticed patterns, how they moved, where they left gaps, and where their equipment was vulnerable. His mind, trained for engineering problems, began to calculate solutions. If he could disrupt their supply lines or jam their communications, even temporarily, it could give the defenders the edge they desperately needed. He moved quickly, slipping from rooftop to rooftop, carrying a small pack of tools and devices he had cobbled together from what was available in the city. Some were simple, wires, batteries, and mechanical parts, but combined with human ingenuity, they could be deadly. He paused to watch a group of alien soldiers moving toward a supply transport. Their formation was precise but predictable. Eli smiled faintly. Predictable. Humans would call that a pattern, he whispered. With careful steps, he descended into an alley. He attached a small device to a transport drone, connecting it to a power source he had scavenged from nearby streetlights. The drone buzzed softly, then suddenly veered off course, crashing into a line of alien soldiers. The explosion was small, but it sent the soldiers scattering in surprise. Civilians who had been hiding peeked out, whispering among themselves. The Queen's army was powerful, but not perfect. Eli didn't stop. He moved from one hotspot to another, disrupting vehicles, rerouting power, and creating small traps. Each act was minor on its own, but together they began to sow confusion. Alien soldiers stumbled over barricades that were too high or too low. Drones lost control and communication lines went dead. For the first time, the city's defenders gained the upper hand, even if only briefly. In the council chamber, Governor Leora and Ambassador Vrek observed the effects. "Look," Leora said, pointing at the monitors. "They're making mistakes. Something is interfering with their coordination." Vrek's glowing eyes softened slightly. "It is unusual," he said. "The Queen does not fail. But whoever is doing this, they are clever. Very clever." Meanwhile, the Queen herself was becoming aware of the disruptions. From her flagship hovering above the city, she narrowed her eyes at the monitors displaying the battlefield. "Humans," she hissed, her voice carrying a sharp edge of irritation. "Do you dare challenge me? I am the ruler of the Zorath Dominion. None have resisted me and lived to tell the tale." Her army moved to counter the disturbances, but Eli had anticipated this. He had already set up decoys and misdirection devices across the city. When elite soldiers advanced to investigate, they found themselves led into dead ends, traps, and malfunctioning equipment. One squad, lured by a false signal, ran directly into an energy net that temporarily immobilized them. Eli watched from a distance, satisfied that his improvisation was working. Back in the streets, civilians began to notice the changes. Small groups formed, following the example set by Eli. They carried whatever they could find, pipes, drones, repair tools, and began to aid in sabotage. Some distracted enemy patrols, others repaired defensive barricades, and a few even attempted to hack the alien drones. The city's energy, once paralyzed by fear, now surged with quiet determination. Eli paused to catch his breath near a collapsed market. He looked at the destruction around him, scorched walls, broken vehicles, and frightened citizens huddled together. The scale of the Queen's invasion was overwhelming, yet in these moments he saw proof of a truth he had always believed. Humans could adapt, improvise, and overcome. A sudden alarm blared. One of Eli's devices had been detected. He ducked behind a pile of crates just as a patrol of alien soldiers approached. They scanned the area, their glowing weapons sweeping across the streets. Eli held his breath, counting silently to 5. Then he activated a small smoke generator, filling the alley with thick white smoke. The soldiers coughed and stumbled, confused, allowing him to slip past them unnoticed. Emerging on another rooftop, Eli scanned the city. He spotted a group of defenders trapped on a bridge under heavy fire. Without hesitation, he crafted a makeshift energy shield from discarded panels and redirected a small power source to it. The shield flickered to life, providing cover for the soldiers as they retreated to safety. When they saw him, a few waved in gratitude before continuing the fight. As night deepened, Eli realized he had become more than just an observer. His small acts of ingenuity were beginning to have real impact. The alien army's movements were disrupted, their supply lines damaged, and their confidence shaken. News of his actions spread quietly through the defenders, giving them courage. The idea that one human could influence the course of battle inspired more citizens to join in, using their own skills and creativity. High above, the alien queen frowned. She had expected to crush the city quickly, to see humans bow in fear. Instead, she saw resistance, clever strategies, and even defiance from those she considered weak. Her army's losses were minor compared to the size of her forces, but the disruption was significant. It forced her to reconsider her tactics and focus on smaller, targeted strikes rather than overwhelming attacks. In a hidden corner of the city, Eli met with a small group of volunteers. They were humans and aliens, young and old, engineers, pilots, and workers. He shared his observations, explaining weak points in the alien formations and suggesting ways to exploit them. "We may not have their power," he told them, "but we have our minds. We can make a difference if we act together." The group worked through the night, constructing traps, creating distractions, and sharing strategies. They moved quietly, like shadows across the city, striking at the alien forces when they least expected it. The Queen's army, for all its might, could not anticipate every human action. Each small victory built momentum, each success inspiring the next. By dawn, the first signs of change were visible across Novara Prime. Alien patrols hesitated, supply transports were delayed, and soldiers moved cautiously, aware that hidden human defenders could strike at any moment. Citizens emerged from hiding, helping to repair barricades and tend to the wounded. Even those who had initially fled in fear now found courage, inspired by the actions of Eli and his team. Governor Leora and Ambassador Rek watched from the council chamber as reports came in. "The tide is shifting," Leora said quietly, a note of relief in her voice. "It may not be enough yet, but the Queen has underestimated us. That is our advantage." Rek nodded, his glow softening. "Yes, she has underestimated the resilience of humans, and now they begin to rise." In the midst of the city, Eli paused to look at the horizon. Smoke rose from the battle below, but he could see small lights flickering. The shields, the traps, the improvised devices his team had set in motion. He felt a surge of determination. This was only the beginning. The Queen had power, but humans had courage, creativity, and the willingness to act when others stood frozen in fear. As the sun began to rise over Navara Prime, casting golden light across the damaged but defiant city, Eli understood something profound. The battle was far from over. The alien queen had nearly brought the city to its knees, but the spark of human ingenuity had been ignited. From the shadows, ordinary people had begun to take a stand, and in that moment Eli knew the tide could be turned. The city of Navara Prime had endured a long night of fear and chaos, yet with the first light of dawn, a quiet energy began to fill its streets. Smoke from small fires rose into the sky, painting it in shades of gray and gold. The citizens emerged cautiously from hiding, peeking around corners to see what remained of their city. Though destruction was evident, a sense of determination was spreading among them. They had seen one human, Eli, take bold action, and that had sparked hope. Eli moved quickly through the streets, guiding small groups of volunteers. They were a mix of humans and aliens, each bringing different skills. There were engineers, medics, pilots, and even students who had never held a weapon. "Remember," Eli whispered as he distributed tools and makeshift weapons, "we may not have their strength, but we have our minds. We can outsmart them. Every small action counts." His group began to set traps, sabotage supply routes, and block streets where alien patrols moved. They worked in silence, moving like shadows across the city, striking quickly and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Each successful act of disruption created a ripple effect. Alien soldiers became cautious, their movements slower, their communication faltering. Across the city, ordinary humans who had been hiding started joining in. A merchant armed with nothing but a wrench helped dismantle an alien drone. Children carried messages between defenders, guiding them to areas that needed support. Even elderly citizens assisted by rigging small energy barriers and signaling patrols to avoid dangerous zones. The idea that humans could contribute, even in small ways, spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, the alien queen observed the unfolding chaos from her flagship. Her glowing eyes scanned the city, narrowing as she noticed the disruptions.
"Humans," she hissed, her voice resonating with authority. "How dare you resist me?"
"You are insects to be crushed." Yet the queen's fury did not translate into immediate success. Every attempt to reorganize her forces was met with new obstacles, as human ingenuity continually interfered with her plans. Supply convoys were delayed, elite patrols stumbled into traps, and communication lines were jammed by devices Eli and his team had created. For the first time, the Queen's army was showing signs of strain, and that realization angered her. Eli's small team faced its own challenges. One squad, tasked with sabotaging an energy hub, was ambushed by alien soldiers. A fierce skirmish ensued in a narrow alleyway. The humans were outmatched in strength, but they relied on speed, strategy, and clever use of the environment. Eli directed them to a series of preset traps, collapsing scaffolds, energy nets, and smoke devices. The alien soldiers, caught off guard, were forced to retreat. "This is working," whispered one young volunteer, her hands shaking but her eyes bright with excitement. We're actually making a difference." Eli nodded, his gaze fixed on the advancing enemies. "Courage spreads faster than fear," he said. "Once people see that resistance is possible, they will stand with us." As the day progressed, small victories multiplied. Citizens began taking initiative without waiting for orders. A group of teenagers cleverly rerouted energy from streetlights to power improvised shields. Workers used cranes and scaffolding to create barricades that slowed alien vehicles. Even pets seemed to play a role, chasing small drones and creating distractions. It was chaotic, inventive, and unpredictable, but it was effective. The Queen, sensing that her initial strategy was failing, decided to focus on the human who had sparked the resistance. She had seen Eli's actions through advanced surveillance and recognized him as the source of the unexpected disruptions. "Bring him to me," she commanded, her voice filled with fury. "Crush him, and the rest will follow in fear." Eli, unaware of the Queen's attention, continued coordinating his team. They moved to protect civilians trapped in a plaza under heavy fire. Using a combination of shields, barricades, and quick-thinking maneuvers, they evacuated the frightened citizens while holding off alien patrols. For every human who faltered, 2 more stepped forward to help. Courage, once rare, was now contagious. At the same time, the Queen deployed a squad of elite guards to eliminate Eli. They moved with terrifying precision, but Eli anticipated their approach. Using signals and distractions, he lured them into a trap where makeshift energy barriers and collapsible structures gave the humans an advantage. The elite soldiers were powerful, but they underestimated the cleverness of ordinary humans. One by one, they were forced to retreat or be captured, their confidence shaken. In the council chamber, Governor Leora and Ambassador Rek watched reports from the field. "Eli's actions are more than courageous," said Leora. "They're changing the battle itself. Ordinary citizens are rising to defend the city." Rek's glow dimmed thoughtfully. "It is rare," he said. "The Queen has ruled countless worlds. None have resisted her with such creativity and unity. This is extraordinary." The morale of the city's defenders continued to rise. Humans and allied aliens worked together seamlessly, combining their skills in engineering, combat, and strategy. They set up forward positions, created diversions, and sabotaged enemy equipment. Each small success weakened the Queen's confidence, forcing her to reconsider her approach. Eli took a moment to rest on a rooftop overlooking the main square. He observed the city below, not just the destruction but the signs of resilience. People helping each other, barricades holding strong, and alien patrols moving more cautiously. He realized that the battle was no longer just about defense, it was about inspiring action. By showing that one human could make a difference, he had ignited a spark in everyone around him. Suddenly, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A group of civilians had been trapped in a collapsed building while trying to aid a wounded alien patrol. Eli didn't hesitate. He gathered a small team, including engineers and volunteers, and rushed to the scene. The building was unstable, with debris and smoke filling the air. Using ropes, energy barriers, and careful coordination, they rescued the trapped civilians and brought them to safety. The small victory was celebrated quietly, but its impact on morale was immense. Meanwhile, the alien Queen's frustration grew. She could not understand how a single human and a few allies could disrupt her carefully planned conquest. Her strategies, perfected over centuries, were failing because of creativity, courage, and adaptability, qualities she had underestimated in humans. Eli, sensing that the Queen was becoming desperate, began to plan a more ambitious move. He identified the central command hub of her army, where communication and coordination flowed. If his team could disrupt it even briefly, it could create a turning point. He shared his plan with his volunteers, explaining how each person's skills would contribute. "We may not have her power," he said, "but we have our minds, our courage, and our will to protect our city. Together we can challenge her." The group moved out, carefully navigating streets filled with debris and enemy patrols. They set up distractions, lured guards into traps, and slowly closed in on the command hub. Every step was dangerous, but the humans and aliens worked together flawlessly, improvising solutions to problems as they arose. As they approached the hub, Eli looked back at the city below. Fires still burned, but the spirit of the people was stronger than ever. Citizens were no longer hiding. They were standing, helping, and resisting. The Queen had underestimated the human heart, and that mistake would have consequences. Inside the command hub, alien soldiers noticed the intruders but were caught off guard by their tactics. They tried to respond with strength, but the humans' clever use of the environment, traps, and distractions allowed them to advance. The hub, once secure, now faced chaos as the intruders moved to disrupt communication lines and energy flows. Eli led the final push. With careful timing and precise coordination, they successfully sabotaged key systems. Alien communication faltered, supply routes became unreliable, and the soldiers inside the hub were thrown into confusion. The ripple effect spread quickly across the battlefield. The Queen's forces, once disciplined and terrifying, now struggled to maintain order. From her flagship, the Queen glared at the monitors, realizing that her army was faltering. "Impossible," she whispered. This is not how it should happen." She had never faced an enemy that could think, adapt, and inspire others in such a way, and she could sense the human who had started it all somewhere in the midst of the city. Eli, exhausted but determined, looked around at his team. They had achieved something incredible. They had challenged the alien Queen's forces and won small critical victories. The city was not yet safe, but the momentum had shifted. Courage had ignited, and ordinary people were now actively shaping the course of the battle. As evening approached, Eli stood atop a rooftop, overlooking Novara Prime. The city was battered, but alive. Fires still glowed in some districts, and alien patrols moved cautiously, aware of the unexpected resistance. He knew the Queen would regroup, and the next stage of the battle would be even more dangerous. But for the first time, the humans and their allies were no longer merely surviving. They were fighting back. And somewhere in the shadows, Eli realized that the spark he had ignited in the city had become a flame. The Queen had underestimated humans, and that mistake would change everything. The battle for Novara Prime had raged for nearly 2 days. The streets were littered with debris, overturned vehicles, and remnants of alien technology. Smoke from the fires above the city mixed with the rising morning sun, creating a haze that hung heavily in the air. Yet for the first time, hope was visible among the people. Citizens and defenders moved with a quiet determination, their courage ignited by the bravery of one young human. Eli surveyed the city from the rooftop of a damaged tower. Below him, humans and allied aliens continued their efforts, repairing barricades, rescuing the trapped, and harassing the Queen's forces wherever possible. Every small act was a push against the seemingly unstoppable invasion, but Eli knew that minor victories were not enough. To truly turn the tide, they needed to strike at the heart of the alien army. He turned to his small group of volunteers, humans and aliens alike, who had become his trusted team. "The Queen's command hub controls the army," he said firmly. "If we can disrupt it, even briefly, we can create confusion and force her to change her plans. That is our chance." The team nodded, faces set with determination. Each member understood the danger. They were walking into the very center of the Queen's power. But they also knew that without bold action, the city might fall. They moved quickly, slipping through alleyways, ducking behind rubble, and using the chaos to mask their approach. Meanwhile, high above in her flagship, the alien Queen's anger grew. Her forces had been delayed, sabotaged, and harried at every turn. Her glowing eyes scanned the battlefield, seeking the human responsible. "He is clever," she hissed. "But cleverness alone cannot defeat me. Find him, destroy him. Let the rest see the price of defiance." The Queen dispatched a squad of elite guards, larger, faster, and far more powerful than the regular soldiers, to intercept Eli's team. They moved with precision, cutting through streets with deadly efficiency, leaving a path of destruction behind them. Eli sensed their approach. "Get ready," he whispered to his team. "We'll need more than courage. We need every trick we can think of." They set up traps in the narrow streets ahead, using debris to create barriers and rerouted energy sources to create temporary shields. Smoke generators obscured their movements, and improvised alarms warned them of approaching enemies. When the elite guards arrived, they were met not with fear but with clever resistance. Collapsing scaffolds, sudden bursts of energy, and smoke-filled streets slowed their advance. The first guard, massive and armored, stepped into a trap that caused him to stumble into a temporary energy net. He roared in frustration, while Eli and his team struck quickly, forcing the squad to split and giving them a chance to move forward. Each encounter was tense, but the human volunteers' ingenuity kept them alive. As they pressed on, Eli noticed the Queen's forces becoming increasingly disorganized. Confusion spread as traps disrupted communication and supply lines. Soldiers who had once been confident were now cautious, second-guessing every step. Ordinary humans, inspired by Eli's example, began taking more initiative. They were no longer hiding. They were fighting back, using whatever tools they could find. Finally, Eli and his team reached the outskirts of the Queen's command hub. The building was massive, fortified with energy barriers and patrolled by elite guards. It was clear that a frontal assault would be impossible. Eli studied the structure, looking for weak points. Using knowledge of mechanics and human ingenuity, he identified a ventilation system that led directly into the hub's core. It was risky, but it was their best chance. The team moved through the ventilation shafts, crawling silently while the sounds of battle raged outside. They emerged inside the hub, hidden from view. Eli quickly set to work sabotaging control panels and rerouting energy flows. The hub systems flickered as alarms went off, and for the first time the alien army's coordination faltered. From her flagship, the alien queen realized what was happening. Her glowing eyes narrowed as she watched monitors flicker with chaos. "Impossible," she hissed. "How can a single human breach my command hub? Send reinforcements." But reinforcements could not arrive fast enough. Eli's team moved swiftly, disabling communication arrays and redirecting power away from weapon systems. Alien soldiers tried to respond, but without centralized control, confusion spread like wildfire. Energy barriers flickered and fell, patrols lost their way, and critical equipment malfunctioned. Eli looked around at his team, sweat dripping from his brow, and smiled faintly. "We're doing it," he whispered. "Keep going." One more push. At that moment, the Queen herself arrived in a small squad of elite guards. Her presence was terrifying. Her armor shimmered with a strange energy, and her glowing eyes scanned the room, locking onto Eli. "You dare defy me?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the hub. Eli did not flinch. "We are defending our home," he said calmly, "and we will not give up." The Queen advanced, her elite guards forming a protective barrier around her. They attacked with precision, but Eli had anticipated their moves. Using the environment, he lured them into traps he had set earlier, collapsing parts of the hub and creating barriers that slowed their advance. The elite guards were strong, but they underestimated human creativity and adaptability. A tense battle erupted inside the hub. Eli and his team fought with every resource they had: improvised energy devices, clever use of machinery, and coordinated teamwork. The Queen's guards were formidable, but each time they struck, they were met with ingenuity rather than brute force. Slowly, the tide of the battle inside the hub began to shift. Outside the hub, the city felt the effects of Eli's actions. Alien patrols paused as communication failed. Supply lines faltered and their coordination broke down. Citizens and defenders seized the moment, pushing back with courage and determination. The Queen's army, once confident and overwhelming, was now struggling to maintain control. The Queen herself realized that her power was being challenged in a way she had never experienced. Eli, a single human, had turned the battle into chaos. She could see the courage spreading among humans, their ingenuity creating victories she had not anticipated. Frustration and disbelief filled her as she realized her army was no longer invincible. Inside the hub, Eli knew they had achieved something critical. They had disrupted the Queen's control, weakened her army's coordination, and inspired the city to fight back. But he also knew the battle was far from over. The Queen would not give up, and her retaliation would be swift and deadly. He looked at his team, their faces smeared with sweat and grime, but their eyes shining with determination. "We've made the first big strike," he said. "Now we hold this momentum. The Queen has underestimated us, and that is our advantage. We keep pushing, we keep resisting, and we show her that humans are not to be underestimated." As Eli spoke, the first light of evening bathed the city in a warm glow. Fires still burned, but there was a sense of order emerging from chaos. Citizens moved with purpose, defending their homes and aiding the wounded. The city was battered but alive, and now it was fighting back. From her flagship, the alien Queen glared at the monitors, realizing that her control over the battle was slipping. She could feel the determination of humans growing stronger, fueled by one young engineer who had dared to act when others hesitated. She had underestimated the human spirit, and that mistake had turned the tide in unexpected ways. Eli, exhausted but unyielding, stood on a balcony overlooking the command hub. He could hear the distant sounds of battle, the clash of weapons, the cheers of defenders, and the alarms of alien patrols. The Queen had been challenged, and for the first time, she had felt doubt. The city had survived its darkest hours, and now, with courage ignited in the hearts of its people, it was ready to fight back in earnest. Eli knew the coming battle would be even more dangerous, but he also knew that humans, when united and determined, could face any challenge, even the mightiest alien queen. And somewhere in the shadows of Novara Prime, the spark Eli had lit continued to grow, spreading courage, hope, and determination across the city. Novara Prime stood on the brink of history. The city, battered and scarred from days of relentless attacks, had become a symbol of resilience. Fires still smoldered in some districts and smoke rose against the sky, but the streets were alive with activity. Citizens and defenders worked side by side, repairing barricades, rescuing the wounded, and reinforcing positions. The courage ignited by Eli had spread like wildfire, transforming ordinary humans into heroes in their own right. Eli stood on a tall tower overlooking the city. His hands were smeared with dust and soot, his uniform torn, yet his eyes shone with determination. From this vantage point, he could see the chaos and courage intermingled across the city. Alien soldiers, once confident and organized, moved cautiously. Their communication systems were still partially disabled, and supply lines remained disrupted. The Queen had underestimated humanity, and now her army was faltering. Inside her flagship, the alien queen's glowing eyes narrowed with fury. "This cannot be," she hissed. "A single species led by one human dares to challenge me? Crush them all." She unleashed her elite forces, the most powerful soldiers in her army, and advanced directly toward the city's heart. She intended to break the defenders once and for all, believing sheer strength could still turn the battle in her favor. But Eli had anticipated this. He moved quickly through the city, rallying his team of volunteers and allies. "The Queen is coming," he warned. "This is it. Stay focused, work together, and remember, creativity, courage, and teamwork will carry us through." Every small action counts. The team prepared for the Queen's advance. They reinforced barricades, set traps, and coordinated signals between groups. Civilians joined them, carrying supplies, guiding defenders, and even acting as lookouts. The city had become a living network of resistance, with each person contributing in their own way. As the Queen's forces approached, the battle escalated. Alien energy weapons lit up the streets, their beams cutting through smoke and dust. Explosions shook buildings, and the roar of the Queen's army filled the air. But the defenders held firm, using every trick Eli had devised: collapsing streets, makeshift energy shields, rerouted power lines, and unexpected ambushes. Eli spotted a group of elite guards advancing toward the central square. He motioned to his team. "We need to stop them before they reach the civilians," he said. They sprang into action, using traps, smoke generators, and improvised energy pulses to slow the elite soldiers. The guards were strong, but human ingenuity and quick thinking kept them at bay. The Queen herself descended in her armor, a massive presence radiating power. Her glowing eyes scanned the battlefield, focusing on Eli. "You will not survive this," she commanded, her voice booming. Eli did not flinch. "We will not give up," he replied. "This city, these people, they are stronger than you realize." The final confrontation began. Eli's team engaged the elite guards while he maneuvered closer to the Queen. Using his knowledge of the city and improvised devices, he created diversions, traps, and energy pulses that destabilized her protective shields. The Queen struck with incredible force, yet each human countered with ingenuity, adapting quickly to her attacks. Civilians aided in unexpected ways. A group of engineers triggered a power surge that temporarily disabled part of the Queen's armor. A team of students directed drones that distracted her soldiers. Ordinary citizens, once hiding in fear, now fought alongside trained defenders, proving that courage was contagious. Eli faced the Queen directly, standing tall amidst the chaos. She unleashed her full power, energy crackling around her, yet Eli had prepared carefully. Using a combination of traps and improvised energy devices, he disrupted her armor's power flow, creating a brief window of vulnerability. With precise timing, Eli activated the devices, sending a surge of energy that disrupted the Queen's control over her army. Alien soldiers froze, confused and disoriented, unable to coordinate their attacks. The Queen staggered, her confidence shaken. She had not anticipated that a human could turn her own power against her. Seeing her army falter, the citizens and defenders of Novara Prime rallied. They pushed forward, taking the fight to the Queen's forces. Energy weapons, barricades, and clever tactics forced the alien soldiers back, retreating under the coordinated human assault. Eli's leadership had inspired the city to rise as one, an unstoppable wave of courage and ingenuity. The queen, realizing her defeat was imminent, tried to escape, but Eli anticipated her move. Using a combination of makeshift machinery and tactical planning, he blocked her exit, forcing her to confront the humans she had underestimated. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The queen glared, and Eli met her gaze unflinchingly. "You underestimated us," Eli said calmly. "You thought fear alone could control humans. But courage, intelligence, and unity are stronger than fear. And today we defend our home." The queen's energy surged in response, but it was too late. The combined efforts of humans and allied aliens overwhelmed her. Her elite guards fell back, her army faltered, and the energy disruptions prevented her from regaining control. With one final calculated move, Eli triggered the last device he had prepared. A powerful pulse that destabilized her armor and sent a shockwave across the battlefield. The queen was forced to retreat, her forces in disarray. Cheers erupted across Novara Prime. Citizens poured into the streets, hugging one another, celebrating the victory. Humans and aliens alike recognized the heroism of those who had stood against the alien queen. Eli, exhausted and covered in dust, allowed himself a small smile. The city had survived, and humanity had proven its strength, not through sheer power, but through courage, ingenuity, and unity. Governor Leora and Ambassador Vrek stood among the defenders, watching the aftermath. "Eli," Leora said, approaching him, "you've shown that even the smallest actions can change the course of history. Today humans have inspired the galaxy." Vrek nodded, his glowing eyes warm with admiration. "Indeed," he said. The queen underestimated the human spirit. Today she learned that courage and intelligence can overcome even the mightiest power. Eli looked around at the city he had helped defend. Fires still burned in the distance, but the streets were filled with hope. Citizens helped rebuild, cleared debris, and tended to the wounded. He realized that the battle had changed everyone, humans, aliens, and even the queen herself. Respect had been earned, courage had been proven, and the spirit of humanity had shone brighter than ever. The queen, retreating to her flagship, glared down at the city. Though defeated for now, she knew that humans had a resilience she had never expected. She had encountered resistance, ingenuity, and bravery that even her vast power could not easily overcome. The lesson was clear. Humans could not be underestimated. Eli, standing in the central square among cheering citizens, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had started as an ordinary engineer, but in the face of unimaginable danger, he had acted. His courage had sparked a movement, inspired a city, and turned the tide against one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy. As the sun set over Novara Prime, casting golden light over the rebuilt streets, Eli looked around at the people who had fought beside him. They were ordinary humans, teachers, workers, children, and elders, yet together, they had achieved something extraordinary. Courage, intelligence, and unity had triumphed over fear and power. The city was safe for now, but Eli knew vigilance would always be necessary. The galaxy was vast, and threats could emerge again. Yet he also knew that humanity, when united and brave, could face anything. The spirit of Novara Prime was stronger than any force the queen could bring. In the quiet moments after the battle, Eli reflected on what had been accomplished. The alien queen had been defeated, not by weapons alone, but by the determination and ingenuity of humans. Ordinary people had stood up, faced danger, and changed the course of history. And somewhere in the hearts of every citizen, a lesson had been learned. Courage can be found in the most unexpected places, and even a single individual, standing up for what is right, can turn the tide of any battle. Eli smiled, looking out at the city he had helped save. The alien queen had been driven back, and humanity had proven its strength. The people of Novara Prime had faced fear, embraced courage, and triumphed together. The battle was over, but the story of their bravery would echo across the galaxy for generations.